How's it going, Raiders? My name is Ryan, and this is TRC episode 16. Do you guys like healing? Are you interested in healing? Or do you just, in general, like raiding? Well, good news. Today, we're going to be talking healing in Legion and Antorus the Burning Throne. With that being said, tanks, pull timer on you.
The heroes have made it to the glorious finale.
All right, here we go, guys. Set up new chairs, focus up. Let's do this.
All right, guys, get buffed up.
Okay, so we want to soak the annihilations,
Get your shit together.
then we want to target the annihilator,
Put the big girl panties on.
move back to avoid damage from eradication,
I think I've disconnected.
then we target the decimator,
Can we pull already?
then we target boss.
I hope you can swim in molten lava.
Let's kill this dragon.
Marty, that intro never gets old. I don't know how long it's going to take before I get tired of that thing. But, Marty, welcome back, man. How are you?
Oh, thank you. Pretty good. It's a weekend. I like weekends.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks. We're actually I think we're 1 week off from our every other week recording, but you were in Germany, right?
I was in Germany, yeah, and that is correct. So I couldn't really record last weekend.
Yeah, how was that? Did you have fun?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I was visiting my better half, so that's always fun, I guess.
Well, a little birdie, or a rumor has it, if you will, has told me that you went to see a movie in a language that is not one of the two languages you primarily speak.
That is correct. I watched Black Panther in German.
So, were you reading subtitles, or do you understand German?
No, I understand German. I understand pretty much everything, but speaking it, it's another thing, though. I haven't used it since school, so it's hard to talk.
Sure.
But understanding, I do fine.
So, did you like Black Panther in German?
Yeah, I liked it in German. I hope it was as good as in English as it was in German.
Well, that's cool. Well, I mean, other than hanging out with your better half and doing some worldly travels, what have you been up to lately?
Oh, leveling my Void Elf primarily, and raiding, of course, but mainly on my Void Elf, trying to unlock that sweet armor.
Yeah. Now, speaking of raiding, have you guys progressed any further since we last spoke?
Yes, we got a new boss down. It's not right, Chloey?
Yeah, we just killed Antorus in High Command, which was interesting.
To say the least.
Yeah, that's a fun fight. So you guys are now 4 of 11?
3 out of 11.
3 out of 11.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, very good news. Well, for those of you who are probably wondering who this extra voice is, this is our special guest, Chloey. Chloey is a healer and a guildmate of Marty's, and was so gracious as to come in today as our guest speaker. So, Chloey, how are you, first of all?
I'm fine, thank you.
Very, very good. So, Chloey, I just want to ask a few general questions, kind of give everybody a general feel of who you are, and what your story is. So, I guess first and foremost, what is kind of your background with the game? How long have you been playing?
I've been playing for nearly 9 years now, since the end of TBC. So a very long time.
Yeah, that's it's been, so we're at what right now, 14 years of WoW, so that's probably about 12 years there, something like that. Or you said 9, right?
Yeah, I was on and off at the end of TBC, but I've been playing for around 9 years.
Okay, all right. So have you always been a healer, or have you kind of jumped around from different roles and classes?
I've always been a restoration druid. In Warlords of Draenor, I was a shaman, restoration shaman, but my off-specs are always like DPS or tanks, so...
Sure. So the next big question is, Marty, we can't actually figure out where Marty's from. Apparently he's from all over the place and speaks many languages. He says he's Danish, but I don't know if I believe him. And then his partner in crime at the other podcast he does, Tom, is in Northern Ireland. So I know a lot of you guys over in the EU, it's a little bit different than here's in the States, whereas everybody in the States, most of us are from the States, and you guys are all from different countries. So just from curiosity standpoint, where are you from?
I'm from England. I live in Manchester.
England. Okay. All right. Very cool. Very cool. So now Marty tells me you are a raid officer now, or a healing officer. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
I hope you are showing him up and showing him how to be a real officer in your raids.
She is mainly because I don't really have the time at the moment, so she's taken over my role pretty much. So I don't know why I'm an officer still, but let's not talk about
that. So I guess without going into the whole specifics of Marty questionably being an officer still, what is your guys' job as officers in Marty when you have the time, and Chloey right now? Like, what is your job in a given raid as a healing officer? Like, what are you tasked with?
We have our own healing channel, like text channel, and we basically put up rotations for the other healers for like the boss fights, and make sure that they are using their cooldowns when they should be. And if they have any problems, like how we can help them, like with mana or like positioning in the raid.
Very cool. So I guess my next question is, and as Marty probably knows, I have an addiction, and that is World of Warcraft. So I tend to play. Yeah, I tend to play way more than I should, even though I technically don't have the time to be playing as much as I do. But I guess that's the price I pay for getting 4.5 hours of sleep every night. But lately I've been, my shaman is my main, he's an elemental, but it just kind of goes to show when I try to pug things, my guild doesn't do heroics on a night that I can play. And, so I heal as my off spec. And we already have another shaman that does swing heals, but, and I've healed in past expansions. So for you guys, I guess in general, just kind of looking back at, healing in Antorus, or not even necessarily Antorus, but in Legion in general, like, what are your thoughts? I guess we'll start with Chloey. Have you thought healing this expansion's been good? Has it been difficult? I guess, what's your thoughts here?
I think it's a lot easier than in Antorus than in Tomb, but I feel that there are a lot of boss fights where healing doesn't seem to matter. Like, there'll be that one mechanic that if it goes off or if something happens, then there's nothing your healers can do to save the group. And it just feels like healers are sometimes pretty useless, and I don't know, I hope that they fix it for Battle for Azeroth.
Yeah. What about you, Marty?
Yeah, it sounds really, really right, because a lot of our discussion is sometimes, even on high command, for instance, we were 3 healing it at some point, because one of the tactics is to only 3 heal it, and the discussion is always sort of like, do we need to switch one of the DPS for healer? Do we need an extra healer? And the answer is a lot of the time that no, we should be able to do it. But the thing is that the thing that people is dying to is like avoidable damage. But just if you screw up, then you're dead basically. So I feel the same way, that a lot of the time there's not really a lot of things we can do. It's really that personal responsibility to keep yourself alive sometimes.
So are you guys, in terms of like your healing compositions, are you guys running 4 or 5 healers most of the time? 3 healers? What's your general, how you're approaching the number of healers you're bringing to each fight?
I think for Antorus it's mostly just 4 healers for pretty much everything, isn't it?
Yeah, the only fight that we used 3 was High Command.
You actually went 3 healers on High Command?
Yeah, we did.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and a lot of groups are using that 4th healer as a cushion, just due to guildies not understanding don't step on mines. I know both groups I have done progression kills on high command with have utilized 4 healers on that fight. So especially considering a lot of times it's nice to have, especially if you have a holy paladin who's mainly focusing on keeping your tanks up. If you don't run 2 blood DKs, because they can heal themselves and out heal most healers. It's always nice to have somebody who can solely dedicate their focus on the person who is in the pods, especially when they get higher stacks. And then you're arguably left with 2 healers to kind of deal with anything else that arises. So having that fourth healer as a cushion, I know a lot of guilds have utilized that, but we spoke about this before I hit the record button, but I have pulled up here some of the first kill rosters from the Mythic race, and I'm some of these groups are, a lot of them, if not all of them, were running 3 healers. So that's, I don't know, it's kind of cool that you guys did that. So.
Well, we tried to do it. We tried to do it. I think on the kill we actually did have 4 healers. We did.
Yeah, 4 healers.
Yeah, we did have 4 for the kill, but we did try for a long time with the 3 healers. But I think we had to go with 4 healers that night because we didn't have the peoples. So I think that's why we went with 4 healers, to be honest.
Well, and like I said, I only heal as an off spec, and typically just to get me into lower tier of difficulty raids through pugs. So my understanding of healing is limited, but just from being a Mythic raider as an elemental shaman, I see everybody's health bars move. It's kind of hard to not see that unless you turn your raid frames off. And I can definitely say that the sentiment Chloey was talking to earlier, that a lot of times bringing an extra healer doesn't necessarily matter, because some of the mechanics that are causing you to wipe or die, and I think even you spoke to this effect, Marty, bringing that extra healer isn't necessarily necessary, right? Because you can't. How do you heal somebody who goes from full health to no health, and you just can't? There's no sort of time period where you can get a heal in there. They're just from 100% to 0 health. And so I definitely know High Command is one of those fights where even on Mythic, bringing an extra healer can give your guild enough cushion to get through things and maybe help a few extra people survive so you can get the kill. But there are a lot of fights in here where if you goof up, you're dead, and there's nothing your healers can do about it outside of throwing you an external that makes you immune. Which
and also as a holy priest, I have that issue that a lot of the time we're like, oh, all right, everybody should use a personal cooldown to keep yourself alive for this big AoE thing. But as a holy priest, you don't really have a personal cooldown. The only thing we really have is like our guardian spirit, which is like major cooldown. So it always feels so. It feels so bad to be able to actually have to use that cooldown on something as trivial as just keep yourself alive. But yeah, that's just Holy Priest. I know a lot of the other healing classes have it a little bit easier.
Well, and I definitely want to come back to that specific talk, Marty, because you and I have spoken about this on other shows and a lot off the air. Holy Priests right now, our priests in general, are kind of in a weird spot with this raid just due to a lot of these fights being highly mobile fights, But, I guess from here, we're already about 15 minutes in. It's probably time we just jump into kind of walking through each fight. And Chloey, before we get into this, just so I'm kind of aware, and were you kind of the one, even when you guys were going through Heroic and learning a lot of these fights, have you been there since day one of Antorus?
Yeah, that's right. I joined at the start of Tomb, Nighthold, End kind of place.
Okay. So I guess we'll kind of walk through each of the respective fights here, and we can talk to, what compositions are working, how you kind of developed your strats. Is this fight, where are the key points that players who are playing healers should look out for in terms of, watch people's health bars, get ready to heal here or whatever. But I guess to start it off, let's talk Arathi. I mean, this fight, in my opinion, is pretty bland. There's nothing really, even on Mythic, it's not too intensive. What are your thoughts here, Chloey?
The only really big thing that you need to look out for is the double soaking. Like when people get knocked back, they can get knocked back into the tank mechanic, and then they chunk, and you just have to watch out for those kind of people. But otherwise, as you said, it's such a bland fight. It's the same practically through normal to Mythic, apart from the double soaking. As well as the decimation dot that you get in the second phase. We have to have a healing rotation for that, just to keep people alive, because the damage is just so intense that comes in.
Sure. Now, I meant to ask this earlier, and it just kind of reminded me of it. When it comes to compositions and roles and healers right now, I think, in my opinion right now, the balance of the game in a lot of ways, the class balances, the healer balances, the tank balances, you definitely have certain classes that are shining as one of the better options out there. But when you look at the gap between the weakest ones and the strongest ones, it's probably the narrowest gap we've seen in the history of the game. And the balance overall is pretty damn good
for
in my
healers
opinion.
or overall?
Just overall. I mean, even looking at healers, I think, there's certain healers you probably could do without. And you would probably want to take a different healer class in general. But if that's what you have to work with, I think for the most part, outside of just having to run 5 resto shamans and nothing else, you can make it work.
That's a lot of utility, by the way. If you have that many shamans,
absolutely.
That's not a bad thing.
But I guess my question with that being in mind is, do you still very much have the issue where, like, let's say you bring a holy paladin, a resto druid, a resto shaman, and a holy priest? Is that holy paladin solely focusing on tanks? Are the rest of you guys solely focused on raid heals? Are you able to segregate healing duties, or is it just kind of in general everybody just heal people that need healing? In past expansions, you definitely had to assign duties, and I don't know. I guess I'm not aware if that's still the issue or not.
I would say, in general, you don't really have to do it to assign roles like that. I mean, sure, Paladins is the better tank healer, so he should probably be focused on that a little bit more. I don't know Paladins too well, by the way, so correct me if I'm wrong here. But overall, I think you don't really have to do it. I think it really depends on the fight as well, what's going on, and is there anything where there is a lot of tank killing going on, for instance, on high command where you have the people in the pod? It might be a good idea to assign the paladin to focus on those, because he has a strong single target healing. So, but generally, I don't really think so. Not in Antorus.
Yeah. And right now, Marty knows this, but I actually have a paladin, a holy paladin I've made on a horde server for a Mythic Plus team with some friends, and I've been healing quite a bit on him. And one of the nice things about paladins is they effectively have the ability to heal 3 targets at once with their running double beacon talent. And so they, like you were saying, Marty, they can definitely focus on the pod players and still keep the tanks up. But I can tell you this, having been in groups for the most part that are running the tanks that are doing really well, and then joining a group right now that has a warrior tank, our warrior tank needs a lot of heals. I definitely see why people are making the argument right now that warrior tanks are probably the worst of the tanks out there right now. They're definitely... they're not in the same place as some of these other tanks are. And so I've seen where a paladin will definitely need to solely focus on the tanks. But I guess my question for you two is, are you guys actually talking and discussing segregating duties, and you focus this, you focus that, we'll take care of the raid? How are you guys handling all that?
Well, with our team, we have a holy paladin, and we know what roles we should be doing. Crashed knows that he needs to look after the tanks, and he knows what he's doing. We don't have to really tell them what to do.
Yeah.
We're used to the same composition, so we know what we're meant to do. Well, that's what I think. Anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chloe,
Sure.
because especially with Crashed, because I've known him my whole Warcraft career pretty much, and so I know that I can count on him to do what he does best. So I think you just it's like a football team as well, right? You start to know each other and you start to play together, and I think that's the case in here as well. If you have a healing team that is used to play together, then you sort of know what the other players are going to do ish most of the time.
Sure. So Marty, I guess as we continue to walk through these fights here in a second, I know you had spoken at one point of you were considering switching back and forth between Disc and Holy due to some fights being much more mobile than others. Have you gone to actually doing that?
Well, I would love to do that, but I just can't wrap my head around Disc properly, I think. And what I usually do when we have our clear runs is that I try out disc and just see how it works, but then I switch to holy, and my numbers just is so much better on holy than they are on disc. So I think I'll just stick it out with holy, to be honest.
Sure. So how are you guys handling your, I guess going back to walking through the bosses, how are you handling your healing rotations in terms of cooldowns for Garathi?
Normally we just set up a rotation for when the decimation dot kicks in when at the end, but at the start, like we say, like you can use your cooldowns as long as it is up for when you need, like when it's needed. But we normally stick to the same rotation each week, depending on like which healers turn up. But normally it's the same every week.
Sure. So, so who's your fourth healer? Right now you're running a Resto Druid, a Holy Paladin, and a Holy Priest. What's your fourth healer?
It switches between another Restoration Druid and a Mistweaver Monk.
Okay. And what makes you decide between one or the other for each fight, or is it just who's there and available?
It's mainly who's available, but we've recently just brought back the Mistweaver Monk, so we're gearing him up a bit to get him back to, like, up to scratch, really.
Sure. Well, monks right now, in my opinion, their throughput healing is really strong. A lot of the logs and stuff I've looked at, monks are doing fairly well, in my opinion. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but we'll keep moving here. Let's talk dogs. This is a fight you guys have done on Mythic so far. What's up with this fight for you guys? I guess Marty, we'll start with you.
Well, let me get this out of the way. I hate that fight. As a holy priest who needs to run on the fire dog and not really having a lot of time to stand still, this fight is horrible for me. So I would love to go disc on that fight, but it's not working for me. so I don't know, Chloe. I hate it. What do you think about it? I know you love falling through the floors.
That was one time. I actually quite enjoy it, but that's because I'm a more mobile class. I think it's a lot better for restoration druids and restoration shamans because they can run around and heal, and it's great. But I think for, as Marty said, like it's really bad for like classes that can't move and cast. But yeah, I love it. Apart from when I fall through the floor, obviously.
So when are you using your CDs on this one?
I don't really think there is a set place where it's useful to heal them. I would say just use your best judgment on this one. I don't know what are you doing, Chloe? Because I can't really use my cooldowns in that fight. So what are you doing?
I run the Inner Peace talent so that my Tranquility is on a lower cooldown, and I take the True Life talent as well. So like, I just keep using my cooldowns when they pop up, because one is always up when the other one is on cooldown. I tend to use it when we have to move with the dogs, and normally when we have to stack up and there's like Molten Touches going off everywhere.
Yeah, because I mean, that, in my opinion, as I'm thinking through the fight right now, you have a bit more flexibility to use it as needed, whereas other healers, if they're going to kind of focus more on using it at a time that it's going to be the most effective, given the fact that a lot of healers can't use their CDs on the move, I would probably say have to wait until you're on the fell dog or the purple dog. And wait for when everybody else is having to move, and there's especially when you're having to move as a group around the fire dog and you're dropping all the fire stuff, people tend to take a lot of damage during that period of time. But like shamans can drop theirs and then move. You can do yours on the move, Chloe.
Yeah.
Paladins can do theirs on the move because it's not a channeled effect. Monks can do theirs. Theirs is just an instant use, right? They don't have to be standing still for either one of theirs.
No.
Although one of theirs is not even really considered a CD, is it? Chiji? Isn't he kind of just so weak? It's not really.
Yeah, I think it's only priests on that fight that might have a hard time using the cooldowns. I mean, sure, there is probably times on as you say on the Shadow Dog where I could use mine, but since everybody else in our raid team usually uses theirs and keeps people topped up, then I'll just focus on just normal healing the raid. To be honest, that's what I'm doing on that fight. It's not a fight where I'm high on the meters, but I'll just be there and try and keep the odd low health person alive instead.
Now, are you going talent-wise, Marty? Are you going more single target here, or are you still staying more AoE healing? Because I know Holy Priests have the ability to kind of talent differently to focus more on their single target heals versus their AoE heals, correct?
Yeah, but I'm usually always staying AoE heals because we have like crashed our paladin. He's got the single target healing.
Sure.
Sorted out, so there's no need for that, to be honest. So I'll usually always just stay AoE heals in our guild.
Sure. Well, since you guys it's fresh in your minds, let's move into High Command, since that's one of the next 3 bosses. I guess for starters, how do you like the fight?
No.
I know you guys said you recently killed it, but
well, I would say I don't dislike it. I think it's one of those fights that I do find sort of fun. There's a lot of things going on, so you need to pay attention to a lot of things. And I don't know, I just a lot of the times I like those sort of fights. But as we already did talk a little bit about, I really dislike the whole if you screw up, you're pretty much dead. And I don't like the RNG in it because you can get hit by multiple abilities at the same time, and if that happens, then you're pretty much dead as well. So it's one of those fights where RNG has to be on your side as well if you don't pay attention. So yeah, it's I don't hate it, but I don't love it either.
What about you, Chloe?
It's difficult really because I find it rather frustrating, that fight, because I think our biggest problem was people with shot grenades not moving out far enough.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's only so many times you can say move out or like move away from everyone, because sometimes like people will just move like 2 steps back and it'll still hit everybody. So it's like I said before, if you have to trust your teammates to get through the fight, and sometimes it just doesn't work and you wipe. So it was kind of frustrating for that boss, because I think we should have killed it a lot sooner than we did. But there's only so much you can do as a healer in that fight.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, things like that can be frustrating. For instance, the 2 or 3 tries before that, I was actually doing pretty good on meters. But on the kill we actually had, I got stunned like 3 or 4 times by teammates, and that means that obviously my healing throughput will go down as well. So, I mean, sure, we killed it. It doesn't really matter, but it's still annoying to know that you could have done better. In my opinion, at least, that's how I work.
Yeah. Well, and I could say from my perspective, even as a DPS, I think everything you both have just said is absolutely the case. This fight is absolutely dependent on everybody doing their jobs. Don't step on mines. Get out with the grenades. A lot of our groups, we had issues with some of the ranged who were not necessarily well suited for being AoE DPS on that fight. Not switching fast enough to the bats, or people being way off in no man's land and causing mines to be dropped where they shouldn't be, or adds to spawn way off to the side when we needed them to spawn on the boss, or range not remembering to back out away from the boss on pod 2 after you're no longer necessary to be in the shield. And so like the fell guards would charge to in melee and start whirlwinding in melee, and it was just a collective set of issues. And I think for a lot of groups, I know both the groups I've done progression kills on this boss with, it was definitely the case where we should have killed this boss in about half the amount of pulls it took us to kill it, and a lot of times it was 1 or 2 people who just couldn't be bothered to do mechanics, and I don't know whether it was they were forgetful, they weren't really paying attention, or what, but I can see the frustration and know the frustration that you guys are speaking to. But so how are you using cooldowns as needed, or are you having set points?
We don't really have set points. I think most of the people use their cooldowns on I can't remember the name of it, but when the huge AoE where you shield some of them, I think that's where it's mainly used, or if too many mines are triggered at the same time. But I don't really think we have anything set.
Yeah. Well, I know from a lot of groups when I was first looking up this fight and learning it, watching other kill videos and stuff like that, if your group does these fights flawlessly, you can actually predeterminately have people run over mines to clear some space up. And so healers can have a bit more of a point where they can use controlled, decision making and use their CDs.
Definitely,
because they know for the rest of the fight, people are gonna run out with shot grenades. People are gonna avoid mines. So if you have a bunch of mines down in a certain area, especially like on pod 1, you can have somebody run over a few and then use the CD and negate the damage. But no group I have been in has been at that level of play where we've been able to say we're going to use our CDs here, we're going to use our CDs there. We've had a few points on the second time around, or even the first time around, where if, like I said, people don't switch to bats quick enough and somebody gets knocked out and we don't have enough pillars down to spawn shields, we've just said we're gonna skip using the shield here. Healers just use your CDs or whatever.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility to do that. So you can control a little bit better. So yeah, definitely a good place to use your cooldowns.
So we'll move on from here. Now, what boss have you guys gone to next, or have you not even started in on progression on another boss?
We have moved on to Portal Keeper, whatever her face is.
Hastabel.
Yeah.
So you haven't even done. So you guys are saving Enar for the last of the 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We felt that the ENR would be a lot easier than Portal Keeper, so we wanted to get the harder boss down first, or at least try to.
Yeah, and we are pretty close actually to getting Portal Keeper down. I think what was our best try? Like 12%, 8%, something like that.
12%, I think. Yeah.
Well, you keep up at that pace, Marty, and you guys are going to pass me in progression. So
that's the plan.
Well, I hope you do
I'll come with you.
Yeah, no, I've killed Enar, but I've only done progression pulls on Portal Keeper, and I don't even think we've gotten her that far down. But I mean, in general, what do you guys, how do you like this fight, Marty?
I'm on the down platform, so I mean it does not too much for me there, except just keep everyone alive. I know Chloe's going up, so maybe she has a different opinion.
I get the hard job. Like I'm one of the people that has to go onto the green platform to get the debuff to go onto the red mini boss. Like I have to rely on the tank that's going up to call for a cooldown if he's running and there's like he's got his stacks and stuff. So it's just a lot going on, and like you have to pay attention, and if you mess up, then like your team is dead. Because the tank takes a lot of damage and you have to listen for the people calling their interrupts, and if one goes through you have to pay attention because then you get hit by a meteor. Like it's just a lot going on for the people going up onto the platforms, so it's interesting, but it's hard.
Now, are you splitting the healers evenly, 2 stay down, 2 go up, or are you sending more up or keeping more down? How are you doing that?
It's only me going up as a healer onto the platforms, 3 healers down, 1 healer up. Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked that is the groups I've done progression pulls on that was one of the things we struggled with, and that was one of the points I argued from day one was we need to be leaving more healers down. The healers that go up, if you send 2 of them, one of those healers is going to be bored out of their mind. For whatever reason, the amount of damage that goes out down below is much more extensive than the damage for the people going into the portals on Mythic. But so you're sending the druid up and you're leaving the monk, the priest, and which one am I missing here?
Paladin.
Holy Paladin.
The paladin, leaving the paladin down. Now, you said you're going to the other platform. Are you actually grabbing a debuff, or are you just healing the tank?
Yeah. We have 2 demon hunters and me going for the green debuff to go onto the red mini boss. So I have to pay attention to all the timers and the health and stuff, so I go at the right time, because you have to try and stagger them, because if they go off all at the same time, your team up there is dead.
Now, I would think they're probably wanting you to get rid of your debuff first, just so you're available to heal people. Yeah, or no?
Yeah, we try to do that, but sometimes the demon hunters are faster than I am. So I use sprint and stuff, but still they just dash in front of me. So it just depends, really.
So do you like the fight? I mean, now that we've spoken at length about, how the fight is. I mean, are you a fan of the fight? Could you care less, or what's going on?
I enjoy it, but again, it's one of those fights that it makes the healers feel a bit useless, because if those imps get their cast off, like if you don't interrupt them 2 or more stacks and the raid is dead, like you have to wipe. So you have to kind of, I don't know about Marty, but like you have to rely on the down team to interrupt all the time, and sometimes they just can't do it because the ads are too spread out or whatever. But yeah, it makes me feel useless up on the platform, because I'm just trying my best, and then I just see the down teams all dead, and I'm like, okay, wipe it up.
What about you, Marty?
Yeah, I mean, I've never done the platforms on any difficulty, so this is just a boring fight where I have to stand and heal stuff, and if things go wrong, then I can't really do anything about it. So that's pretty much it for me. It's not fun down on the platform.
We can swap if you want.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Sending the Holy Priest to be one of the debuff grabbers.
I'll
be there in 20 minets, guys.
Sounds like a great idea.
Well, I mean, I guess you got feathers, right?
Yeah, sure.
You're a dirty feather user instead of using the shield one for the speed boost.
The feathers are better. You get more speed run out of it.
I'm lazy. I don't like having to put feathers down. I just like hitting my one shield button, and
Yeah.
So we'll move on. So now you guys have both done ENR on heroic, at least, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, get ready for micromanagement central when you get there.
That's what we heard.
Yeah, no, and this fight, and I've said it before, a good raid leader will make or break this fight. It's pretty easy to keep people alive, even when they goof up on this fight. But as long as people go to where they're supposed to be at the right time and kill the right ads, this fight is pretty trivialized, but it's a lot of micromanagement. You got to send, there's an additional mechanic, if you don't know already, where you have to send people into a portal. And there's 4 portals. If you get to a 5th, it's just, you're done. This fight is purely, you can't speed up or slow down this fight. It's all on a timer, really. So if you got to make sure you're sending the right people into the portals, so you're leaving the right people outside of the portals at the right time. But yeah, so I mean, from a heroic perspective, I guess Marty said he was not present for learning a lot of these fights and came back and just kind of got rushed through a lot of stuff. So I think from here, it's probably better to speak to you first. From a progression standpoint, even on heroic, what were your thoughts on this fight?
We actually had to get a 3rd tank in for the very last one, where all platforms are active. We had to ask one of our DPS to go tank, just so that he could hold off the big ad until one of the teams had finished. That was difficult to figure out, because we'd end up with like 4 or 5 DPS dead, because the big ad was just rampaging around and killing people. But for Mythic, it's going to be interesting, because I'm going to actually be raid leading that for our guild. So I think it'll be interesting to do it as a healer and get to shout at people and tell them where to go.
Well, the one thing I can tell you, if you're going to be raid leading that fight, is make sure people understand let your AoEers be your AoEers, and some of you that are not as strong AoE might want to focus more on single target damage. That was one of the struggles I've had with both groups I've done this fight on, is everybody and their mother wants to parse. And everybody wants to go AoE, and it's like, if you have an elemental shaman, 2 affliction locks in your group, if you guys are all going AoE, then you're going to have issues, especially as the fight gets later on down the road, with single target damage on obfuscators and other things. And it's just, it can get out of hand pretty quickly. Like one of the groups I did this fight with, they did things a little weird, I gotta admit. And we actually had to hold off on DPS at one point because they weren't killing things quick enough. And so we'd get to a point where a lot of the mobs that were up would be at half health, and then the ENR would do her thing and she'd kill a bunch of ads, and we'd lose a ton of percentage because you don't gain percentage when she kills the ads. And the other group I had done this fight with, that was never the case. We had way too much AoE. What did get us in trouble with that fight was later on down the road, we didn't have enough single target focus, that we were, ads were just getting out of hand. But again, like I said, making sure you're sending people in the right order to the portal, stuff like that. It's about as much as I can tell you. But I'll be interested to see what strat you guys come up with, because I've never been a part of a group that had to utilize a 3rd tank. So that's definitely interesting. But I mean, do you guys like to fight as healers?
It's pretty boring.
There's not really a lot to do for healer. There's not even a rotation of cooldowns or anything that you need to pay attention to. It's just, it's a fight.
I think the general consensus I've heard from the community and everybody I've spoken to is they like the fight the first 1, maybe 2 times they did it, just because it was kind of neat to get in there and do something different and see it. But after that, like, everybody hates the fight.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think it's one of those fights where it's something new that Blizzard is trying out, and it's fun the first few times, but then it just get old. It's like the loot ship all over again, or some of those similar fights where they're trying something new and that's cool, but in this case it doesn't really work, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'll move right along here. For those listening, just so you are aware, from here on out, none of the 3 of us on the show today have been at a mythic level of difficulty yet on any of the bosses to come. So a lot of what we're discussing will purely be speculation based on what we've known from watching videos, looked in logs, speaking to people who have done it. But a lot of our discussion will be purely based on our experiences in the heroic difficulty. So that being said, let's talk M&R. It's the next boss in line here. The group I'm currently in, I dread doing this fight. The bridge is going to be a nightmare. We have, like I said, we have a warrior tank who is probably the least able to do the bridges properly. We're going to have to probably assign a healer to really extra look after him. And from everything I've heard and seen, warriors just are not the greatest at dealing with the bridges here. But from a heroic standpoint, what are your, do you guys like this fight? Is it pretty boring? Do you have issues with people, not moving far enough away when they're getting the debuffs? What are your thoughts here? I guess we'll start with Chloey again, because she was present for progression, Marty.
Yeah.
Well, the first time we did it, it wasn't a case of people not running out far enough. It was that the healers were dispelling it too quick. Mm-hmm. So as they were running out, they get dispelled, and then everybody would be asleep. But the biggest issue that we had was people running ahead on the bridge. Sometimes it's all right, and then they clear the thing at the end where it roots you. But sometimes people just run ahead and they run through everything, and that's not what you want, obviously. So, but for Mythic, I've heard that the tanks have to clear, run and clear some of the stuff before the rest of the team runs across. So I'm interested to see how that goes with our team.
That sounds like a job for Crash to go heal.
Yeah, that'd be his job.
A lot of groups actually utilize a Demon Hunter for what you're talking about. They'll bop the Demon Hunter, and the Demon Hunter will just run through and clear a lot of stuff, and then sometimes they'll just save a battle res to pick him up. But so from a healing perspective, I guess let me ask you this: are you guys, especially when you're on that first platform before you go over the bridge initially, are you guys staying as a group and moving away from the sleep person, or are you spreading out and just asking people to pay attention and move away from people asleep?
We put a marker up on the right-hand side and tell people to run towards the marker. And if someone doesn't run away quick enough, we say don't dispel them or wait until it drops off, or like move away from that person so we can just dispel them.
So are you just doing a back and forth thing? Go to the marker, come back, go to the marker, come back, go to the marker, come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've done it both ways. We had the first group I did it with, we moved as a group. The second one, it's everybody spread out, and people are just kind of on their own to make sure they move, and the healers are kind of left to, give ample amount of time for people to move and pay attention to, I guess use their eyes to see if somebody's standing too close. But most of the groups I'm in at this point are so geared, it doesn't really matter, especially on heroic and normal. But I don't know. I'm definitely looking to get into this fight on Mythic. It sounds a lot of fun for a DPS. I don't know how it's going to be for healers, but so now are you guys doing set cooldown rotations in this fight in heroic, or just kind of as needed?
As needed, I think. I don't know of an opposite cooldown rotation.
Yeah, we've never had a cooldown rotation for that, because it all depends on like when people, like if people stand on the mines or what gets triggered on the bridge. Like it just depends. It's really situational, that fight, I think.
Yeah, and it's yet another of those fights where Holy Priests is not that great because a lot of moving is going around across the bridge and stuff like that. So it's up to you guys, Chloey.
All right, well we'll move on then. Let's talk Kenny G. I like this fight a lot. And for those of you that don't know the moniker Kenny G, that's Ken Garoth. I don't know what it is about this fight, but I just in general really enjoy it. I think to me it's the right mix of a lot of movement, stand still, get off the boss. It seems to be a steady flow of constant change, but not constant change at such a high rate of frequency that it's annoying, so for me in general, I like this fight, but I've never healed this fight in any sort of progression difficulty. So I guess I'll leave it to you guys to speak to that effect. Again, Chloey, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts here on this fight?
I think again, it's really it's a lot easier for restoration druids because, like as you said, it's movement and it's standing still. Like whenever we're moving between the ads that spawn, it's really easy for restoration druids to just throw out rejuvenations, and then when I stood still, it's wild growth. So I don't know about priest, and I'm scared to ask Una about movement. But yeah, for druids, it's pretty easy.
Well, it's not too bad. It's not like a constant movement for this one. So if you position yourself correctly, then you don't actually have to move too much. And we also have like two warlocks. So we have the gateways as well. So you can get back and forth fairly quickly. So it's not too bad for a stationary healer like a holy priest. It's all right. I've done it a few times in looking for raid now, which is always fun to see when the beam goes off how many people dies.
Yeah, that always amazes me. It's like I had a guy one day he was arguing in an LFR. He was arguing that if the beam goes off right on top of him, that there was no way he was going to be able to get out of there. And the counter argument was made what about the 3 to 5 seconds where he's just standing there doing his like preemptive cast where you can see his hands pointed at you before he actually casts a spell? Did you not notice? So that was quite comical. I felt kind of bad for him because people were being kind of toxic towards him, but it was kind of one of those ones. It was like, well, clearly you aren't paying attention. But no, Marty, I wanted to go back to your comment of as long as you are kind of where you should be. This fight can be trivialized and made pretty easy. It's very easy on this fight when you're moving away from the orbs, or if for whatever reason your tank decides to be all over the map, trying to not be near your tank so you don't get splatted with the hammer. It's very easy to get out of position, or just losing track of where you need to be next. Our group has always done it where half the raid goes to one ad, half the raid goes to the other ad. And so the one half of the raid always goes to the same ad. And the other half of the raid rotates where they should be. And so a lot of the times the raid that has to rotate, I've noticed players, or even when I've been in the part of that group, it's very easy to kind of get turned around and forget to, I need to actually be over there.
And that's where those Warlock gateways is really handy.
Sure. Yep. So, but no, I like this fight. Now, are you guys using, again, CDs as needed, or are you having a rotation of any sort?
No, again, it's as needed. Yeah, a lot of the damage is avoidable, so the DPS should just avoid taking most of the damage, and you should be fine.
Sure. Cool. Well, let's move on to the next set of bosses. We'll talk Coven and Veramithras. Veramathras, however you say it. Now, do you guys go Coven first or Verum? Most groups are going Verum.
Yeah, we go Verum.
We call him Gary,
first.
by the way.
Gary?
Yeah, we call him Gary because some people can't pronounce his name, so we just call him Gary, so it's easy.
Yeah, I could see where maybe with the EU guilds it might be a little different, just because you guys have quite the mixture of accents and primary languages, so I could see where maybe pronouncing certain things might be a little weird. Marty, I know you like this fight, right?
Yeah, I can stand still and heal. It's amazing. Yeah, I mean it's a boring fight, to be honest, but I mean it's one of those few fights in here where I can actually do something, so it's all right.
I got to tell you, man, this fight sometimes is frustrating to me if I heal it in heroic or normal, if there's a good holy priest in the group, because there's times where there's a lot of constant raid damage going out, but if the raid ever gets if the healing ever gets a little bit behind and you could tell that there's some bigger heals needed, like half the time before my freaking chain heal even gets casted, the priest has done his instant cast raid wide heal and a few prayers, and it's like, why am I even here? But I guess, Chloey, do you like this fight? I mean, what are your thoughts here as a druid on this one?
It's my favorite fight. I love to heal this. Just because I can just pre-hot everybody and literally nobody's health goes down. It's great. But again, this fight, if Necrotic Embrace spreads, your team is dead. Like, because everyone gets misery, which means you can't heal, which means it's a wipe. Which when we first started doing this, it was really frustrating. Like when people didn't move out quick enough or they didn't move far enough, and we ended up getting a weak aura to tell us, like, to say stop in the middle of your screen, like when you were far enough away, and then to tell you to move again a little bit further when the debuff had gone.
That's actually pretty smart. I wish our group had done something like that. That was kind of the struggle with us learning the fight, was people knowing when to stop and when to come back and to move forward. But one of the struggles I noticed with our healing too was that players would go out there, they had the debuff, or even the tanks, when they'd get the debuff from tanking, and they'd be a little bit low health, and obviously when they have the debuff, they can't get healed. But then all of a sudden their debuff would disappear and they wouldn't get healed. And again, the group I'm speaking to when we did this fight there was a lot of people who were just trying to be meter heroes. And so there wasn't a lot of, especially from the healers, because our group at that time was running a Holy Paladin, 2 Holy Priest, and a Resto Shaman. And it's like you have Holy Shock, Riptide, and both the priests have instant cast heals that they can, depending on whether they're using single target or AoE, they can lower the cooldown of and have at the ready. It's like you would think that somebody would be waiting for that debuff to drop and throw them one of those instant cast heals right away to prevent them from dying. And I can't see
That's how we should do it. Yeah.
Well, I can't too many times we'd watch people sit there for like 3 seconds after the debuff would disappear and not get a single heal because people were just spamming their raid wide their AoE heals, and the smart heals just weren't hitting that person for whatever reason, and they die. And that to me was extremely frustrating, you know. And as a healer, as of having healed that fight now, I could see where it's very easy to not get out of the case. And there's been some times too where I've noticed, like, I've been standing there with my mouse over the person's health bars, waiting for that debuff to disappear. The debuff disappears and they die before I can even get the heal off on them. But I don't know. Those are just my 2 cents. So I've also noticed this fight doesn't seem like it's set up well for any sort of cooldown rotation. Are you guys just? I'm guessing you guys probably don't even have one, do you?
No.
Sounds like we're really unorganized, but we just do it when needed.
Well, and just to clarify for those listening, like she said, it does sound disorganized, but there's a lot of, especially on heroic and normal, it's a bit easier on mythic just because there's a higher level of micromanagement necessary to do some of these fights on mythic, that it almost does require being more organized with cooldowns. But on heroic and normal, a lot of these fights, there's just not really much need or even an ability to have a cooldown rotation. So while it does sound disorganized, it's really not. So take that with a grain of salt, just as kind of an FYI.
And again, you as we already did talk about, if your healing team is played well together, then you don't, a lot of the time, don't really need to organize healing cooldowns, because you know generally who will do what when. And I can recommend getting either a weak aura or an add-on mod, whatever, to keep track of all your healer cooldowns as well, so you can see when other healers are using their cooldowns, so you don't blow all of them at the same time. So I think that's just what we're doing a lot of the time, that we're actually keeping track on other cooldowns as well, so I don't blow my cooldown when the two druids are doing theirs as well at the same time, stuff like that. So So even though we don't always agree on it to begin with, we do keep an eye on it all the time.
And I definitely think that's an excellent point to make. I think with anything, whether we're talking tanks, healers, DPS, no matter what, just playing as a team and being cognizant of what's going on around you is imperative to the success of a raid team. So I think that's definitely a valid point to bring up. So Fairmouth is pretty straightforward. Let's talk Coven. I hate this fight, and I'm a ranged character, so you know I'm not a fan. But what about you guys?
I don't know how it was in progress, Chloey. Was it fun in progress?
Definitely not. The biggest issue that people seem to have is like doing like the ads with the storms, like getting the timing right. With the movement ads, we normally have to CC them to like live through the storm, but sometimes if they don't work, you just get absolutely pummeled. Like you get one shot obviously from the movement ads. Is it Norganon's movement ads? And that again is another mechanic that if you don't execute it properly, your team is dead and there's nothing your healers can do. But once we got around storms, it was a lot nicer, but obviously it's RNG with which technical you get, which sometimes can mess up your fight because you normally have to use heroism on the healing ads, and sometimes that's in the middle of the fight, so no one's got their cooldowns up or anything, so it's difficult because you never know what's going to come next, kind of thing.
Did you guys start in on progression for this fight before they nerfed the storm?
I think we did. I'm not sure.
So just to clarify, what happened was the initial storm, the way it worked, if you weren't already standing in a storm or able to get inside of a storm within like half a second to a second, it was brutal, even on the lower difficulties. So it was interesting on progression early on, but we're running a little short on time, so we're going to keep moving here. Let's talk the last two big baddies. Let's talk Agrimar. Marty, I know you weren't present for Agrimar progression and learning, but Chloey, I know you were. This is an interesting fight. I kind of like it. How was it for you guys as healers?
It's really difficult as a healer because nearly all of our healers got assigned to CC in the ads, so we were all like spread out around the room, which you would think would be alright, but it kind of made things difficult because you'd end up with like a couple of people without a heal, like nowhere near a healer. But we kind of had to change our composition in the raid to keep everyone alive, because sometimes one person would get caught out because he wasn't close enough to a healer and he would die, and most of the time it was one of our top DPS, so it was a bit of a problem.
Yeah. So I guess the takeaway I'm getting from that comment is positioning is everything on this fight. Definitely.
Because if you get knocked back too far, you get thrown off the edge. We've had that a couple of times. The tanks need to be good at positioning the boss. The healers need to be good at positioning themselves where they are around a lot of the raiders. And the DPS need to make sure that they're stood in the right place to CC and be next to where the healers are. So everyone has their own kind of positioning job, really.
So what about CDs? Do you have set rotation, or are you just, again, kind of sticking with the as needed?
Well, when we first started with Agramar, we had a cooldown rotation, but eventually we just kind of dropped it off and everyone realised like when they needed to use it. Because you need to use one basically whenever an ad goes in. Or else you die, obviously. So, but once you get used to it, you kind of don't need that rotation there anymore. Like your healers know when they need to do it, and you need to trust that they will remember. For sure, Marty. Marty, just kind of in general, quick. Are you a fan of this fight or no? Or
I actually think the two last fights are both pretty good fun. They're both pretty intense as well. So that's a lot of things to do. So things to do in a game. That's fun, right?
For sure. Again, like I said, we're short on time, so we'll move to the last guy real quick so we can wrap up. Marty's got to get out of here for another podcast. But Chloey, let's talk Argus real quick. This is a fight that has arguably 3 to 4 phases, depending on which difficulty you're doing it on. What are your thoughts here, and how was it for progression?
When we first started it, like the healers were going into like the last phase with like nearly their full mana, which I kind of had to knock out of them. I was like, you need to use your mana, like nearly all of your mana for when you die, because you get all of it back. So that there's no point in like saving your mana, because you die and you get rezzed and you get full mana again. So once people realize that you can kind of burn your mana in a sense, I think the hardest part for the healers is when all the big ads come out and your tanks are getting pummeled. There's cosmic beacons maybe going off because you're not used to a couple going off at the same time. I think that's the hardest part for us healers, in my opinion, when the big ads come out.
Yeah, I sort of feel like once you get to that phase where you can just rest all the time, it should pretty much be a kill, because you can just get back up really, really quick. Obviously, you still need to keep you can keep it alive a little bit longer. What's the tree that rests you if you heal it? So remember to keep an eye on it, put it on focus target, whatever, so you can throw it some heals.
Yeah. Now, there's different phases with different stuff going on, and there's definitely different times of healing intensity. Now, again, are you back on a as needed basis for CDs, or you have certain points of like, are you saving CDs for the big ads and then just kind of using it in general in the last phase, or how are you handling that?
It's normally tank defensives that need to be watched on that one when the ads come up, because sometimes if you're not watching it, the tank will just die because they're getting pummeled by the ad that gets bigger. But other than that, we use Exhaustus raid tools for like keeping an eye on raid cooldowns. So we just believe that our healers won't overlap with their cooldowns. But yeah, that's all I can think of, really.
Now, do you guys like the fight? I guess just in general, quick, Chloey?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's a lot different to all the other bosses in the raid.
Sure.
I really like fights where you can burn your mana. That's that's always fun. I find that you can just go ham and do stuff, and then you'll get mana back during the fight. And then I find it interesting that this is yet another fight where we as heroes, officially in the lore, part of the lore has been killed. This is the second time that we died.
Yeah, that's true. Since Vincent's Wrath, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, again, guys, I'd love to keep chatting, but we are short on time. I apologize for the shows being a little out of sync and a little late. Marty and I are working through some hosting issues. I've switched off of a different hosting service, and we had some unforeseen kind of blockades, but we're getting around and we're getting it figured out. For those of you who are kind of itching to get last week's episode, you can go on over to YouTube. By the time you're listening to this, both episodes, or at least last episode, should absolutely be up on your podcatcher of choice. But roundtable real quick, guys. I want to say, Chloey, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. It's kind of unfortunate we had to rush through this last half. That's partly my fault. Marty and I mixed up some times that Marty and I discussed, so we started a little bit late. But Chloey, I don't know. I don't know if you're really involved in sort of the podcasting or any sort of like other communal resources. But is there anywhere people can find you outside of the game, or are you just in general just kind of inside the game?
I'm just inside the game, really.
Cool. All right. No, that's fair. Marty, as usual, man, you're here. You're present. Let people know where they can find you.
Well, they can find me on Twitter at Unamithil, and it's a weird name. It will be in the show notes, I'm pretty sure of it. So find it over there, or if you want to listen to another podcast of mine where we talk about all things Blizzard, then the bluerecluse.eu. You can check it out over there. And there's also a link to my Twitter over there. So if you really want to, you can find it there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. Go check him out if you like all of Blizzard's games. And I say do that so that you can come over and see what a even better all Blizzard's game podcast is, the Blizzard Umbrella that I do. All jokes aside, though, go check them out. Blue Recluse guys are great fun. Dusty and myself on the podcast I do, all Blizzard games, have a pretty good relationship with those guys. As you can tell, Marty's on my show here. And we just did a joint episode with Tom and Michael, as Marty and Dusty, respectively, were out of town having funs. So it was definitely an interesting episode. But we have a lot of fun with these guys. So if you guys want to hear all Blizzard Games news, come check them out, Blue Recluse, or us over at the Blizzard Umbrella. As for myself, guys, you know you can find me here. You can also find me personally on Twitch and Twitter at McIrish Gaming. Streaming's been a little off as I am on the hunt for a new permanent guild, but as I kind of figure that out, I will update you guys with times for the streams.
You should come to the EU. We have cookies.
I know, right? You have cookies? I'm sold. We'll figure out the MS issues just for the cookies. But yeah, guys, if you want to get a hold of us here at the show, ask us questions, make topic suggestions. We have, we're always willing. I can tell you we have some pretty good ideas for some content leading up into BFA, and we will announce more of that as we get closer and wrap up these respective episodes. But if you want to find us on Twitter, you can find us at _TRC podcast, or you can find us at our email account, theraidersconfessional@gmail.com. There is no apostrophe on the S. But as always, guys, it's been fun. We love doing these episodes, and we hope you guys are enjoying them. But that's going to wrap it up here for this week. So, Dusty, take us out of here. See you later.
Sorry, I died. Was I supposed to stand in the green puddles or the orange ones?
Hey, get together over there, bud.
This show has been hosted by Dragon Powered Studios, and the intro and outro has been brought to you by Thankful Cow Solutions.
Moo.